All right, we're talking this week about the nature of man. And as we begin the study of this course, there are three underlying ideas that we need to understand as we think about God in his relationship to us. And the ideas underlying what this course is about. In all of our study here, we want to see that God is love. So whenever we understand about what God is doing, we need to, if we haven't seen how it's a loving thing to do, then we haven't thought through far enough to understand the foundation that everything that God does is out of love. Okay? So our first presupposition underlying everything is to identify the love of God. Secondly is to identify the intelligence or wisdom of God. God is intelligent. And so that's the second idea that's there. God is relating to us, and everything that he's doing is out of expression of his infinite intelligence, and he's bringing forth his intelligence. The third thing is that God relates to every aspect of his design. God relates to his creation according to its design. Or according to the way he made it. All right, and we want to be able to identify these three ideas and be thinking through and understanding the ways of God from the foundations of these three ideas, or these would be three presuppositions that we're going to be looking at and identifying God's work. Okay, now let's see that the first thing about creation is that God has made different categories of creation. And that is because God has had different purposes for different aspects of creation. Now, if you have a different purpose for your creation, then you need to have a different design so that thing that's created has the capacity to fulfill that purpose, see? Now, like if we were to create a device for transportation to move us from one place to another, then if it's going to move us, then that design has to have some way of moving, doesn't it? It may be like a car, and people have found wheels to be a wonderful way of moving objects. So therefore your design has wheels to it, like a car or a truck. And so your purpose that you have in mind then brings forth some design requirements. You wouldn't want to try to just climb on the tree out here and say, okay, tree, take me into Tyler, because the tree doesn't have in its design a means of movement, does it? See, so your car then doesn't look hardly at all like a tree looks, see? Because the purpose for a tree and the purpose of a car being radically different, the design is radically different, see? And now once God has a purpose in mind, because God has a different purpose in mind for me than he had for a tree, God didn't create the tree with the same design as I have, see? Now, therefore you have trees that have their branches, etc. And now there is some things that are common, like the design of a dog. He has a common design to a tree because both the dog and a tree have bark, don't they? And okay. But now look, once God has created the tree with its particular design, God is going to relate to the tree according to the way that he made the tree. And he's going to work in my life according to the way that he designed and created me. And so you don't look to see God's ways of caring for the tree being the same manner that he takes care of me. Okay? And let's look at four Well, really, there's about 3 categories of creation that we have. And look at the way that God deals with each one of those 3 categories. One category is just a physical substance. Category of physical substance. Okay. Now this would be things like sticks and stones, or the bones in my body, okay, or the cells that are in animals, whatever, the physical relationships here. And these realm is controlled. Now, we're talking about control, and there needs to be control in every aspect of creation. And of course, the description of the kind of control that God has in dealing with sticks and stones, so that He maintains order in that realm, is a control called physical law. So physical law is the description of how things normally occur in the physical realm. Physical law, the description of how things normally occur in the physical realm. Now notice this, it's describing way things occur in the physical realm. All right, the physical realm, that's the realm of the sticks and stones. That's the realm of molecules. And it's a description, okay? Now one physical law, a description, is the law of gravity. The law of gravity is a description of the way that objects, when move to the center of the gravitational field, see? And when we're in the world, on the Earth here, the center of the gravitational field of the Earth is the center of the Earth, and so objects are falling down, see? And so they write a law of gravity, and that describes the way in which objects fall. This law of gravity describes that when you let go of a piece of chalk and it starts falling, it starts slowly at first, but it keeps speeding up, going faster and faster and faster, and it keeps speeding up at a rate of 32 feet per second. And then you have laws describing how far it would go after it had gone 1 second, and how far it would be after it had gone 2 seconds. And then your law also describes that if you don't have any air resistance, if there were no resistance there, that a feather would move just as fast as a rock does. And so the law of gravity describes that it doesn't matter how little or how big the object is, how much it weighs, or what the density of the object is, how much weight there is per volume, it's going to fall at the same speed. All right? And so you have these various descriptions that the law of gravity gives you. Now technically it's not the law of gravity that does it. The law of gravity is a description of what is occurring. See? It's describing, it's telling you, it's defining to you the way something is happening. And nobody's ever walked up to Mr. Gravity and shake hand. Mr. Gravity, can I shake your hand? Thank you for helping me keep my feet on the ground. Because nobody knows what gravity is. They've identified electrical forces between atoms. They've identified the nuclear forces in the nucleus. But and there evidently is this gravitational force, but nobody has ever yet discovered where it is or how it operates. You can just observe the effects of something that we put a word on. Somebody made up the word gravity. That sounds pretty good. And they could have said, but gravity seems to sound better than, so they used that sounds. But the word gravity is a sound then, a sound that has a definition for it, which describes the way things fall. Okay? And somehow in the relationship of physical substances, there seems to be something in operation here called, there is something in operation called gravity, whether God does it directly or it's tied directly to the physical substance. You can't say yet because nobody has identified where the force is coming from. But it is there. And so a physical law is the description of how things, now notice to put the word normally. So all the word normally means is that it is possible that there could be an exception. Like the gravity's operation on water would keep the water in the lake, wouldn't it, right there? But there have been an instance of where God has brought an east wind, and that east wind just blew the water apart, and the Israelites walked through on dry ground, didn't they? So if God sets up a normal pattern of the way things would occur, then God can certainly make an exception to that too, can't he? And so we have then this description of the way things normally occur in the physical realm. So it's dealing with physical substance. It's describing how it occurs, and it's normally that way. And that means it's reliable. It's wonderful that there's a way things normally are, isn't it? And because these physical laws then, they're a testimony. They testify of God's faithfulness. We have a sense of God being faithful, and his faithfulness, his constancy, his predictability, his regularity is all the way through his creation. Okay, see, and that provides, that's important, it's essential to us, because that says in the universe there is a fundamental place of security. There's a place of being able to be relaxed and be at rest because God has provided things predictable. And that gives us a foundation of security. If it weren't for the faithfulness of God and these physical laws that were there, you would never know what's going to happen next, and you wouldn't be sitting in your chair relaxed right now. Instead, you would have bolted your chair to the floor and would be wearing seat belts, because you'd never know when the gravitational field would reverse and you start banging your head on the ceiling. See, but you don't worry about that. You're secure in your chair, because you're resting upon the constancy of the gravitational field. When you get in the airplane, you're trusting that the laws of aerodynamics won't reverse on you, and the forces that were pushing the plane up don't suddenly reverse and push it to the ground. Otherwise, you would never be secure to get in the airplane, because you'd say, I'll never know at what minute the laws of aerodynamics are going to reverse on me. See, so here's a place of security. Here's a place of restfulness. See, and so God then has a particular design to the various aspects of his creation, and he's relating to that creation according to the way that he designed it. But wherever he's working, we're going to be identified that God is love, and we're going to see that there's a loving activity of God, and it's reasonable. So all of God's activities in the physical realm, he is structured for a loving and reasonable way of working there. Everywhere you're going to see the evidence of God's love, the evidence of his intelligence, and you're going to see God working with his creation according to the way he designed it. And so God's way of caring for a tree will be as different from the way of caring for me. And the way of caring for every aspect is going to match the design of that object. God doesn't create me in some particular way like me and then say, well, now I'm going to treat you the same way I treat a tree. He doesn't do that, see. So we're going to be able to see God's love and His intelligence and His special way of dealing with objects according to the way He made them. Okay. All right, in our next session we'll pick up further on this idea. All right, we're looking at the various ways of, or aspects of creation, different designs that God has created in the universe. And one sphere is the sphere of the physical realm, where there's the realm of the physical substance, things like sticks and stones, and these are described by physical law of how things are occurring in the physical realm, the way in which God provides direction and control. All right, so God is structured into the universe. One means of direction and regulation, or direction control, is the control of gravity. Don't know what we know, and the law of gravity describes God's means of control of physical objects as it moves it to the center of the gravitational field. And there's a constancy in the physical laws testifying of God's faithfulness. But then there's something else too here. I remember back when I was 11 or 12 years old, I guess, about that age. I grew up on a dairy farm. My father had about 30 cows there. I had 5 older brothers and 1 younger brother. And my father had asthma, and so he was disabled health-wise, and my older brothers did most of the work on the farm, and they tried to get a little bit of work out of me. That was difficult to do. But they'd have chores, like when I was little, 8, 10 years old, whatever. I'd need to go out in the evening and go upstairs in the barn and throw down feed for the calves and throw down bedding calves, and put fresh bedding under the calves and feed them their grain and their water, and the little ones feed the milk to them and take care of the calves. So we all had different jobs, different chores that we were to do. And then my dad always had a saying too about boys working. He'd say, 1 boy is half a man, 2 boys is no man at all. You know what he meant by that, don't you? You get 1 boy, he can work pretty hard right alongside with you, and you get about as much work done about half as much work done in a day as a man will. But if you get 2 boys, they'll start playing with each other, and they're not going to get anything done, see? And so 1 boy is half a man, and 2 boys is no man at all. Well, anyway, we were true to form one summer evening when we were out there. We were supposed to be milking the cows, and we went out behind the barn, and behind the barn there were these 2 silos where they'd put feed in during in the fall that would be saved up and feed the cows with during the winter. In the summertime, these silos would be empty because the cows are out eating on the pasture. Well, anyway, you got this one empty silo, and it was about 30 feet high to the top, 10 meters up there, and it'd be a nice. My older brother would take a stone and throw the stone up, and it would go up and drop down inside the silo. And so another brother and I were watching him throw these stones, and then he picks up a little bit bigger stone, and every time you throw these stones up, they'd come back down, right? And that's one thing about just when you throw anything, toss it up. Of course, we know like with rockets and stuff, you can toss things up so high that they go outside the realm of that gravitational field, and you can get them in orbit. What you do really when a satellite is in orbit around the world, it's still being pulled in by the gravitational field. It's just moving that way fast enough so that as it's coming down, you got your speeds tied up, so it's coming down at the same rate that the Earth is curving away, so it's always never catching up to the curvature of the Earth, see, and so it stays in a particular orbit. And but if you throw something up, if I throw this chalk up in the air 10 times, right here in this room, how many times is it going to fall to the ground? And 10 times out of 10, right? Always the same. See, and so that's that. Now, when I throw that piece of chalk up there, what is the cause making that chalk go up? By throwing it. All right, and so I have a cause of throwing it, and the effect is what? It goes up, right? So that's what you call a cause and effect relationship, isn't it? It's very simple. You have a cause, which is a force, a physical force, and the effect is the effect then, or the result that comes from that physical force. Now, if I hold the chalk up here and let go, when I let go, you see the effect is the chalk falls, and the cause for that falling, of course, is the gravitational force, right? And so that's a cause and effect relationship, where your cause is the physical force, and the effect is the result that occurs because of the physical force. If I go over here and then I push the light switch, my physical force is a cause which has the effect of the light switch moving. And when the light switch moves, that light switch moving is a cause which has the effect of opening up the circuits, doesn't it? Open up the wires. And when the wires open up, those wires opening up is a cause which has the effect of not allowing electricity to flow. And when the electricity doesn't flow, that's a cause which has the effect of no electricity going through the fluorescent light tubes up here. And when the electricity is going through this gas, that electrons flowing through there is a cause which adds extra energy to the molecules in the gas, which has the effect of pushing the electrons that are around those gases into a higher energy level, which is an unstable place. And then those being up there have a cause of having the effect coming back to normality, but in order to come back to the place where electrons are supposed to be around the atoms, they have to give off energy. And when they give off that energy, that's the effect. They give it off in the form of light, see? And so you have a whole sequence of cause and effect, where you can have a cause which will produce a result, but that result maybe then is a cause for some other result, right? And so you have then a whole chain of cause and effect, don't you? This is a whole chain of cause and effects. You can say, well, I did this, but when I did, that caused that. But when I did that, that became a cause which caused something else to happen, and that, when it happened, that caused... So you can have a whole chain of these events, can't you? A whole series of cause and effect relationships. But in the physical realm here, your physical law, the means of control is cause and effect. Cause and effect. Now if you take water and put the water in a kettle here and put it over a fire, we've got the fire burning here underneath the water, and you heat that water up, and you heat it up to 212 degrees Fahrenheit or 100 degrees Celsius. If that water is, if there are no impurities in the water, and if you're at 1 atmosphere of pressure, if it is at sea level of pressure, what will happen to that water when you get up to 212 degrees Fahrenheit? Boil, right? How many times out of 100, if you heat it up 100 times out of 100 times, how many times out of 100 is it going to boil? 100 times out of 100, won't it? And so the thing about the physical realm, when you have control by cause and effect, under the same set of conditions, a cause always brings forth its effect. So if I take water and I put some antifreeze in the water, then because there's some impurities in the water doesn't boil at 212. You can make a solution about half antifreeze and half water, put that in the radiator of your car, and then your water doesn't boil until about 236 degrees. And so you've raised the boiling point some maybe 20 or 25 degrees because you've added some impurities to it, right? So you change the conditions and your effect will be different. But then but as long as you're under the same conditions, you always have the same effect. And that's the cause and effect. So a cause always brings forth its effects 100 times out of 100. So under a means of control which is cause and effect, under a means of control which is cause and effect, you have a certainty of results. A certainty of results under cause and effect. So the water will boil 100 times out of 100 when you heat it up to the boiling point, and it's always going to be that way. Now let's name some other examples of cause and effect. Let's go around the room here. Let's start giving some examples of cause and effect in the physical realm, and then identify what the cause is and what the effect is. Sandy, give me one.
Oh boy. Well, if you don't start your car, it's not going to go anywhere. You have to start it to go.
All right. So what's the cause?
The cause would be that you have to start it.
And the effect is it starts.
Yeah.
Right. All right.
And then it goes down the
road. All right. The cause is you turn the key, and the key has the effect of making the electrical contact. All right. All right. All right. Somebody name one out of cooking in the kitchen. Darcy, give me one out of cooking.
Turning on the stove.
All right. You turn the knob. What's that? That's the effect. What is that? Tell me what you're doing, and tell me what the cause is and what the effect is.
When you're turning the knob on the stove,
Yeah.
it's the gas.
All right, and so, all right. So which is the cause?
You
Turn the knob, and what's the effect?
the gas goes through.
All right, the gas goes through. All right, and your stove. All right, all right. Jeremy, name one.
By deck old Darcy, his molecules will get blood in them. If you hit someone, they'll bruise.
All right, so the cause is the breaking of the capillaries in the skin, and the effect is the resultant bruise in her. All right, now when you're baking a cake, when you're baking a cake, the cake bakes, right? Now what's the cause and what's the effect? All right, the heat becomes a cause.
And it makes it raise up.
All right, your effect is you're having a chemical change inside your substances, aren't they? You're forming new chemical bonds. All right, and so you have a cause and effect relationship there. Okay. And unless I'm the one baking the cake, you always anticipate when you put your baked cake in the oven, it's going to bake, right? And then you have under a certain amount of time. And so on the box they can write on the 35 minutes, and the cake will be baked, unless you're up at 7,000 feet, and then then your temperature's right. So but under a particular elevation, then under a certain temperature, it'll take this long. So a given set of conditions, you have a certainty of results. This is what is going to happen 100 times out of 100. Okay. So under control, under a control of cause and effect, under physical control, physical regulation, you have a certainty of results. Okay. And so when my brother was throwing those stones up in the air to go up in the silo, back behind the barn, they would come down And if he aimed right, they'd come down inside the silo. If he didn't, they'd come down outside if he got it up high enough. See? Now, after he'd thrown a few and he got them up and they were coming down in the silo, then he picks up one a little bigger one. I wonder if I can throw that one in. And it's about that big, and he'd see how far he could throw it, and he threw it up as far as he could get. And it got about 3/4 of the way up the silo and hit it. And I instantly, all these things going on in my mind, that's not going to make it, and it's going to come down and hit me on the head, and I'm not safe out here. I better get inside the barn. And so I immediately, I just see that thing going and hitting the silo, and I panic, and I'm going to run in through the barn door because I don't want the thing falling. And what I did, either I didn't get going yet, or I ran right underneath it. But in any case, it hit me right here. Okay, and knocked me to the ground, right? And so now we got this terrible thing of trying to get me patched up, well, I was so disappointed in my father, because you know what? My father never called the police. The police never came out and arrested that rock and put that rock in jail for attacking me. That rock never went before a judge. The judge never sentenced that rock to 3 years in jail for, that rock could have been, it should have been a sentence for at least assault, and it wasn't even accused of assault and battery. It attacked me, hit me right there. Now, why wasn't that rock, why didn't it ever have to serve a single day in jail for attacking me?
No choice.
All right. All right, it was cause and effect, and therefore it didn't have any choice in the matter. And now let's go just a bit further. What does that say about the action then? All right, it wasn't accountable. The rock wasn't held accountable for that action. Why wasn't that rock held accountable for that action?
Because it didn't cause it to happen. Your brother threw it.
Oh, my brothers threw it.
Yeah.
So the action originated then from my brother and not from the rock, didn't it? All right, so the rock then didn't originate the action, right? And so, see, obviously then you'd think it's really silly. I mean, not silly, just crazy. I mean, if a rock was actually put in jail for hitting me on the head, you'd say, that is crazy. That rock, the action didn't originate with the rock, did it? It didn't originate with the rock. So, under physical control of cause and effect, then there is no responsibility. A rock does not have responsibility for what it does because the actions that occur from the rock do not originate from the rock. No responsibility, right? Those actions did not originate from the rock. And if the rock didn't do it, then you can't hold the rock accountable for anything that it did because it didn't originate that movement. And so there is no accountability. No accountability. And if there's no accountability, there's no way of, you know, it would be crazy for my dad to come out and say, Rock, I'm gonna put you in a special place, in a special museum, and honor you forever for having hit my son, because I've been wanting to hit him on the head for a long time. See, there's no reward or no guilt, right? There's no guilt. That rock never felt guilty one day in its life for hitting me on the head, see? Because we can't be guilty for something that we didn't originate. So there's no guilt. There's no basis for reward or punishment. There's no responsibility. simply because the action did not originate with the rock. If there is guilt or accountability or responsibility for an activity, it's going to have to go back to whatever caused that activity. Okay? Now this is fundamentally important to see. Okay? You don't ever talk about putting rocks in jail because rocks don't originate their action. And so in summary, in regard to the physical realm is controlled by physical law. And this is a description of how things occur. How things occur. How they do occur. You put the fire underneath the water under a prescribed set of conditions, and that water boils 100 times out of 100. So there is certainty of results. But the water is not guilty for boiling, because the water was caused to boil. And it boils 100 times out of 100. It has no choice to not boil. But because it's at that temperature, it's not guilty if it burns somebody. Because the activity did not originate from the water, and the water couldn't make it different, and there is no guilt. They're not guilty water molecules, and there's no accountability. You can't put the water in jail for burning someone, see. All right, let's take a break here, and we'll come back and continue on next session. All right, we've talked about the physical realm. This is the realm of the sticks and stones. It's physical substances that God is concerned. He, as a wise, loving, intelligent ruler, he must maintain control of every aspect of his creation, and he maintains control of the physical realm. The description of his control are called physical laws. And physical laws describe the way things normally occur in the physical realm. It's a control of causation, and a cause always brings forth its effect under a prescribed set of conditions. So what is caused always occurs, always has a certain effect occur under that set of conditions. So you have then certainty of results. If you have, under a given set of conditions, if you have a cause occurring 100 times, its effect will come forth 100 times out of 100. Certainty of results. And so when I take the rock and I throw that rock up, that rock has no choice about doing something different from that. And so the rock has no freedom then. So in the physical realm, under the control of cause and effect, you have freedom. You do not have freedom. There is no freedom. That which is caused is not free. That which is caused is not free. So when you're talking about causation and you're talking about freedom, you're talking about opposite things. Because if something is caused, the effect has to occur. But if something is free, that means that there is a freedom about what end will come forth. The water does not free to decide not to boil when it has been heated to 100 degrees Celsius at sea level, and it has no impurities. So if it's pure water, at 1 atmosphere of pressure, you heat it to the boiling point, it's going to boil. It has no freedom about not boiling. That which is caused is not free. Freedom and causation are opposite ideas. Nothing can be caused and free at the same time. Now let's go on and talk about another realm, the animal realm. the animal realm. All right, and this will be a realm where in most of the activity in the animal realm you will see the activity coming forth by something called instinct. Instinct. And instinct is, again, let's see if I can read a particular definition I had for instinct here in the notes. Yeah. All right, here's the definition of instinct. It's on under page 2 in your notes. Instinct is that mysterious control by which, independent of all instruction or experience, without deliberation, and without having any end in view, animals are directed unerringly and spontaneously to do whatever is necessary to preservation. Let me write that long thing out here. Instinct. That mysterious control by which, comma, independent of all instruction or experience, without deliberation, and without having any end in view, animals are directed unerringly and spontaneously to do whatever is necessary to preservation. To do what is necessary for preservation. Now let's take some examples of this. So now look at the words here just a moment. The word mysterious. That means just simply it's happening without us being able to understand how it's happening. That's all the word mysterious means, right? It's something that we can observe occurring and cannot explain why it's happening, and so therefore it's mysterious. Mysterious control by which independent of all instruction or experience. Independent of all instruction or experience. Consider monarch butterfly. Monarch butterfly is a beautiful little butterfly that is born, not born, that comes into existence up in Canada. Is that where it starts from? And then flies down to Mexico. Let's get a map of that. Let's see. Need a world map? This goes far. Yeah, but this one might go far enough. I think we can get enough off this map. There'll be different regions here. Up in this area, for example, you can see flying across a little butterfly, monarch butterfly. Remember, Jeremy talks about seeing these things flying across into Minnesota there. And but they'll travel from the regions up in Canada down to Mexico, which be down in this area down here, a little area, 2 miles by 2 miles, a little 2 square mile area up north of, up to the northeast of Mazatlan. And they'll make this journey, and then they'll go back, and they die. Now, I can't think right now whether the journey originates in, whether they start here and then go up there and come back and die. I think it's the other way around. I think they are born up, not born. The big word's metamorphosis. You know how what happens is up in this region you have a plant called the milkweed plant. I always love these milkweed plants. How many how many have never seen a milkweed plant before? You haven't seen it? Huh? Don't know. All right, it's a plant that grows up about that high, and the reason it's called a milkweed plant is because when you break it open, the sap that goes up, it's white. It looks just like milk. And then it grows this little pod on it. It's a little green pod that looks just like a little fish, about that long. And I used to, as a little kid, play with these things, pretend I'm fishing, break them off, and they'd be like, because they look just like a fish, the shape of them. Except they don't have fins, of course, but the shape of it. And then you open it up, and it's just like silky inside. You got these little seeds in the means of propagation when they come to when they're ripe and they open up, the wind will blow these, and they got these little parachute things that float the seeds over and plant them somewhere else. And so you have these little plants, and they got these big leaves on the milkweed plant, and this monarch butterfly will lay an egg on the underside of this leaf, and in a very short time that egg will hatch out into a little caterpillar. And this caterpillar starts eating up the leaf, and so it eats the leaves off these milkweed plants, and until it gets to be big, and then this larva, this caterpillar, spins a cocoon. Chrysalis is the proper name for it, and it goes inside this chrysalis. I will show you a video of that tomorrow. Call me on the phone tomorrow morning, so I'll bring it so you can watch a video of this. Guys, you call me up so we can see it. It's fascinating. And then, after a period of weeks, it will emerge as this beautiful butterfly. Okay, so here it is. It now has gone through metamorphosis and become a butterfly. And by the time it emerges as a butterfly, the parent butterflies are all dead. Okay, so the mother butterfly lays the egg and she dies. And you have this new butterfly emerge through a process of metamorphosis. And there was nobody there to tell it that it's supposed to fly to Mexico. It had never done it before. They only make this trip one time in their whole life. And so there was no parents to instruct it, no experience of having done it before, but yet, independent of all instruction or experience, without thinking, deliberation, and without having any end in view, there is no way for us to think, how is it that this butterfly could have the end in view that there's something down there called Mexico and I'm supposed to fly down to Mexico? Mysteriously, it just does. And all these monarch butterflies do that, don't they? And so, and every generation, without error, if you had just one generation that didn't do it, the error of that generation would bring the end to the existence of these monarch butterflies. Unerring, but they just spontaneously do that. And that's the existence of the monarch butterfly, see? And it's a mysterious means of control, so there is a pattern there among these monarch butterflies, and we call that instinct. Got the word, don't know what it is, and somebody made up another sound and said, instinct, that sounds like a good sound. Let's call it instinct. And so we've got a word on it, a name for it. Okay, instinct. I've heard about up in the northwest part of the United States. Up in these regions up here, there's a river that called up through here called the Snake River, and the Snake River will flow on across. This is going downhill out of the mountains all the time. Even though it's going up on my map, it's still going down, right? And so you watch the Snake River flow up down to Washington, and it comes into the Columbia River. And when it gets in the Columbia River, then the Columbia River flows out to the Pacific Ocean. And there's a little tiny stream back here called the Salmon River. And the Salmon River, you get up to the top here above a little town here called Stanley as one example. Where is Stanley? That may not be the map. It's right up around, just north of Ketchum, up right up in here. Around 7,500 feet, you can get to the beginning, the mouth of the Salmon River. Little ponds there, series of little ponds, and these salmon are hatched out in one of these ponds, and they'll swim down the Salmon River to the Snake River, swim up the Snake River to the Columbia River, swim down the Columbia River out in the Pacific Ocean, and salmon have been found out in the Pacific Ocean as far out as even 1,000 miles out in the Pacific Ocean. And they will be, a salmon, their lifespan is a lifespan of 7 years. And they'll begin here, swim out into the Pacific Ocean, and come back 7 years later, and they come back to the same pond where that fish was spawned, and that's where they will lay eggs, and the new fish will be spawned. They've taken trucks and taken some of these salmon and put it in a big fish tank, a big water tank on a truck, hauled it by road somewhere over to another pond, and put them in that pond instead. The fish will swim out of that pond, down the little streams, back to connect to the river, and back until they get back to the pond where they were hatched. And that is where they'll go. And they're driven instinctively to get back there. When they had built dams across the rivers here, for irrigation purposes, the fish would be coming back up, and they'd come to this great big dam, and they're driven instinctively to get back upstream to get to the little pond where they were hatched, and so they'd be there trying to jump the dam, see? And so they would die trying. And so in order to preserve the salmon, then they had to build a little tiny stream that went out around the dam that would just have a whole series of little steps. I don't know exactly how big the steps are, but it'd go from a little waterfall all the way down. That fish would come, and the fish could jump that little into the next little pond and the next little one all the way up around. And so they call this a fish ladder that goes out around the pond, see? And the fish then will jump from one little pond to the other all the way up around until it's gone around the dam, and it keeps on going upstream. Because that fish is driven instinctively to get back to that same pond again. And if you take it and move it by truck to another pond, it'll swim back until it gets back to where it's supposed to be again. This is instinct. Without instruction or experience, they only do this one time in their whole life cycle. Never had an experience, done it before, but they're just doing it. So you have all kinds of incredible things occurring that are marvelous, that fascinated us in the animal realm here. Don't know why the salmon do this. They seem to think, they think maybe they've identified it with the salmon. They believe there's a little metal chip that's up in the, up somewhere associated with the brain of the salmon that orients to the magnetic field. And that gives it it's a precise compass so it can identify exactly where it is. But I don't know if that's been absolutely confirmed or not. Okay? But the wonderful things that are occurring in the animal realm by instinct, we'll pick up and talk more about them next time. All right, we've been talking here about instinct, that mysterious control, which controls animal behavior. And here, of course, in this aspect of the physical realm, in the animal realm, you have control. God has established control over His creation, and you have to have control because God, that's an expression of God as an intelligent and loving. Love and intelligence would demand and require that there would be control in creation, so that everything does not result in chaos and purposelessness. We have purpose to our existence, and so purpose requires a sequence, requires a control to keep things moving toward the end result, the purpose that intelligence and love have in mind. And instinct is wonderful control. We've talked about the salmon. There's this crab here. May not be able to see it very well. This picture of a newspaper. They call it not a crab, a lobster. And this homing lobster. Let me read about this thing. Recent experience indicate that lobsters. You've heard about pigeons. Maybe they call them homing pigeons, where you can turn them loose, and they'll go out somewhere carrying a message and then come back to their cage again. They're homing pigeons returning back. And they say that these lobsters could rival pigeons in their homing instinct, the ability to return back to their starting point, to their home. These are called spiny lobsters. A number of spiny lobsters were collected, banded, and taken 2 to 5 miles further out to sea in various directions and dropped. So there's a little tiny section on the floor of the ocean where these lobsters live. And they grounded some up, and they went off in 2 to 5 miles in every which direction. And they dropped them off, and these lobsters then start crawling on the seafloor. But after a long, arduous journey for a lobster, but despite of severe obstacles, all made it back to their home grounds. The time involved indicates they must have gone pell-mell, lobster-wise, homeward without delay. All right. So if you consider how fast a lobster can crawl along, and you figure out how long it took them to get back, they just immediately were headed right back. See, so here they seem to be instinctively designed to be in a certain sphere, a certain location on the ocean floor, and if you move them away from it, they go right back. Well, you've got all kinds of wonderful things occurring in the animal realm that just are absolutely amazing and wonderful. You've got these electric eels that are born, that come to life somewhere in the Atlantic, and some of them go to the shores of North America, and others of them go in the other direction, over toward Europe. But when it's time for mating, they'll travel all the way back, and so that these eels are always come to exist right in the mating grounds. There's a particular bird that flies. My map doesn't flies from Alaska all the way down to the Hawaiian Islands. Where's Hawaii out here? Here we are. It's a distance from here to here of about 6,000 miles. And this bird, they have to eat a lot of extra food. So they store up fat and then use the fat as energy for the trip, right? Because as they fly here, they can't get any food out over this water. They got a 6,000-mile journey to make. But then if you calculate the size of the wings and how much weight they can carry and how heavy they get, and then compute how much energy that can translate into, they cannot eat enough food to have enough energy to make that 6,000-mile trip. And if they did, they'd be too heavy to get started. And so then how did they make the trip? They studied these birds for a long time. And then finally discovered, as they watch them, you watch these birds fly, and they fly in the V formation, right? You got one bird out, and you've all seen these birds flying in the V formation, right? Well, when they're flying in the V formation, the front bird breaks the wind and starts an air current flowing so that the other birds can fly in the effect of that molecular movement, and that makes their flying a lot easier. And so by flying together in a V formation, they decrease the amount of energy it takes to fly there. Then if they cannot make, if they were just flying one bird all by themselves, they couldn't make that trip. But by flying together in formation and the effect of the air movement that they make flying together, they break the trail, and they can all make the trip. Now, if you just had the point bird flying in the front of that V the whole time, then the point bird couldn't make it. See, he'd use all his energy up. And so what do? Every little bit, they keep changing, right? And as I watched, as a little kid growing up, watching your geese do the similar thing, don't they? As they're flying south for the winter, coming out of Canada and flying down across to the southern parts during the wintertime, they'll be flying these formations, and ducks, of course, too, do that. And as they're flying, you'd see them, they get this beautiful V going, and it seems like they no sooner getting that wonderful V going, and they all break formation, and then pretty soon they form another V. And I always kind of had this kind of thought in my mind, why can't they get their act together? They just get this beautiful V formation and immediately disintegrates and they get another one. And then, until I studied about this plover bird, I realized what they're doing at sea. If you don't change the bird that's in the peak in the front, why he'd be destroyed, right? So these birds don't live by situational ethics. They don't say it's worth sacrificing the front bird so all the rest of us can make. We won't throw him overboard, but they share the work, and they accomplish something together in relationship. See. And so you have the testimony of relationship. There ought to be relationship designed into creation, don't you? Testifying to the reality that the Creator is a God of relationship. And he's not a God of situational ethics. He's designed it so in the context of relationship and working together, we can serve one another and accomplish that, can't we? And so they don't sacrifice the bird. They share the work. And Bill Gothard talks about a particular set of birds. I saw this. I wish I had the picture of. There'll be 5 or 6 of these birds sitting on a branch of a particular tree, or a bush, and the berries are out at the end of the limb. And so the end bird will pick the berry, pass it to the next bird, and that bird will pass it to the next one. They'll pass it all the way down, and they'll feed this bird first down here, and they'll feed one another. Now they all do that. There's something instinctive that's occurring, isn't it? And the Arctic tern, a bird that flies from somewhere here in Canada all the way down to the tip. It's a 10,000-mile journey. I think it's going to the tip of Africa, I think, over here, or South America, but I think it's Africa. They have a 10,000-mile journey to fly, and they return all the way back to the very same nest where they were hatched. And that's what, if that nest is still there, but they come right back to that very same area. They have to build a new nest if that nest were destroyed. Or perhaps if their nest has been destroyed, they can't bring forth, lay their eggs to hatch a new generation. I don't know. But the Arctic terns return all the way back, make this 10,000-mile journey instinctively. You've got these birds that fly across fly Capistrano. What's the name of those birds? The swallows, yeah, swallows, the name of them, thank you. And there's a mission here, a region called Capistrano, and these swallows will fly, and they return at a precise minute every year. And so people will go at this mission, the mission of Capistrano here, and they'll have their clocks there, and I think it's at noon when they come there, when they fly past that mission, and it's the same minute every single year. They're just precise. There's only one time that they were late, that they have them on record. And the weather conditions, that one time they were on late, they were flying against extremely strong headwinds. So it slowed them down, see, because of the effect of the headwinds, they weren't making as good a time on ground speed, see. That's wonderful, yeah. Ran into a different causation. And you've got this bird over in the Midway Islands. They're out here somewhere in the Pacific. During World War II, there was the Allies had a military base in the Midway Islands that they would refuel in flying and involved in the war and in the Pacific. And the Midway Islands, you probably heard about this bird called the albatross that are from the Midway Islands. And the military men named these albatross, they named them the Goonie birds. The reason they named them Goonie birds is because they'd be, in order to fly, they'd start running along the beach. They'd start in the uphill part of the beach, try to be running downhill, and they'll get running as fast as they can run and flapping, and then they'll stumble on something and fall and roll, and they'll have to walk all the way back and try to take off again, and they may fall and roll several times until they get into the air. But once they can get up to a certain minimum speed, then they can start flying. And then they are incredible. So they're designed, the design of their wings and design of their body is for high-speed flying. And so it's very precise, customized design they have. And it works wonderful except for takeoff and for landings. Okay? And so when they have to come in for landing, they have to get slowed down so much that when they land, they're going too slow to fly anymore. And they land, they start running along as fast as they can, they end up falling and rolling. I had my oldest brother said that he got his pilot's license, so he could fly, like a two-seater airplane or four-seater, that type of thing. And my brother always said, any landing that you can walk away from is a good landing. And well, these Goonie birds always walk away, so really, I guess it's a good landing they make. But all these marvels that are occurring. And there's a control that's here. The word on that control is instinct. But again, the means of control here is causation. So the means of control is causation. And again, there are certainty of results. Where you have causation, you have a certainty of results. All these albatross are flying the same way. All these plover birds are flying on that trip from Alaska down to Hawaii, that 6,000-mile journey. You have these Arctic terns flying from Canada down to the tips of Africa. And certainty of results occurring here as well. And so it's a situation of causation, and that which is caused is not free. And so it's an activity that's going without deliberation and without any end in view. And so there is no responsibility for the activity. It's a control brought about by something beyond the deliberation of the animal. And so no accountability. And if the activity doesn't begin with the deliberation of the animal, then there is no thought of guilt or reward. So this is the animal realm. How much time we got left here?
5.
Okay. Now let's look at a third realm. That would be the moral realm. And the moral realm is the realm of self-caused action. The realm of self-caused action. So the physical realm is a realm where you have action brought forth by something beyond the object. The stone is not the cause of its movement, but something that threw the stone or moved the stone is the cause of the action. It's not self-caused action. But now that we're in the moral realm, we're talking about the realm of self-caused action. So we're talking about here another aspect of creation, which is a different type of design. And there is a different purpose in mind for this. God created, we're talking about the realm of people here, of moral beings, and we're created for a relationship. The purpose here is for relationship, love relationship. And there has to be a design capable of fulfilling that purpose. Okay. And this will be a design of personality. And there's certain aspects of personality here that are involved in this, right? If you're going to have relationship, then in order to have relationship, that requires that you're doing something for that purpose of the relationship. So there has to be the ability of deliberation. There has to be doing something with an intention or an end in view, where you're intending or purposing a particular end, a particular result. And in order to be able to do that, then of course you have to be designed with an intellect, which is the ability to perceive and understand. The ability to understand. And aspects of the intellect, of course, are just having thoughts. So we're created with the capacity to think and to interact. And of course, God has intellect too. When we're created for relationship with Him, we've been designed with qualities patterned after Him. So we're made in His image. And one aspect that the Bible reveals to us is that God, of course, thinks thoughts. Jeremiah 29:11, He says, "I know my thoughts that I have toward you, thoughts of good and not of evil, to bring forth an expected end." Another thing you can observe about just creation or just about anything being designed or made, that the designer is always greater than design, than what he makes. A designer, a creator, is always something greater than what he creates. It's impossible for mankind to create something more wonderful than they are. As wonderful as computers may be or may become, they'll never become as wonderful as the design that God created into man in his brain and abilities of his mind. And so the designer is always greater than the design. Now in the creation we can see something that has a frequency, a response to it, of that very fast sequences occurring. Like for example, there's a radioactive crystal that has a frequency characteristic to it of 9 billion oscillations per second. And they've used this radioactive crystal to tune a clock to that crystal. This clock's in Paris, France at the International Standard of Time. And this clock divides, by tuning to this crystal, divides every second into 9 billion parts. And so 1/9 of a second is not very large, is it? It makes this clock so accurate that if this clock were to run for 20,000 years, after going for 20,000 years, it would only be off 1 second in the time that it tells you. Now, if I could drive in my car for 20,000 years, and when I arrive at my appointment only be 1 second late for my meeting, that would be great for me, see? Goodness. Can you imagine the accuracy of only being off 1 second in 20,000 years? And so here's a frequency. Now I got to thinking one time, if God has created something that has a sequence in his creation of 9 billion oscillations per second, what if we imagine God to be a little tiny itty-bitty God, so small, so tiny that he can only think 9 billion thoughts a second, and have a frequency of his mind of 9 billion thoughts in a second. And now, to make my numbers easy, let's just talk about there's about 5 billion people in the world now, but let's just say there's 4.5 billion people in the world. If you divide 9 billion thoughts up among 4.5 billion people, that would be 2 thoughts for every person every single second. And so every second that goes by, God could be thinking about Ernesto twice in that second, where 2 times every second he's thinking about Ernesto and nobody else in the whole universe at that instant of time except Ernesto, see? And in that same second, think about Tony twice too, and Lisa twice. So that, see, if God were so little and so tiny that he only thought 9 billion thoughts per second, we could have God's undivided attention twice every second where we're personally, individually, privately involved with him, and nobody else in the whole universe. See, that'd be no problem at all for God, would it? It's no problem whatsoever for God to be individual and personal with us. And the important thing, of course, is when he's thinking about Larry Allen, what's he thinking? Oh, Larry Allen makes me sick. Oh, I just want to stomp on him. And just, I'm so glad for Jeremiah 29:11. I know my thoughts that I have toward you. Thoughts of good and not of evil, to bring forth an expected end. And so we're talking about a kind of design that is necessary for us to have so that we are capable of fulfilling the purpose that God created us for in relationship. And one of these, of course, is to have the ability to understand, the ability to deliberate, so we can begin to define what end we ought to be pursuing. That way we can see, if we're going to have self-caused action, we have to be self-directed people then, don't we? And then we have to be able to understand what direction we ought to be headed toward. What should I intend to be doing with my life, you see? And you have to have the ability of self-deliberation then. And that requires, of course, thoughts, particular type of, to be able to think through this type of thing. And we'll have to continue next time talking more about the nature of our design.